Well, Nebraska hosted over 20 prospects on campus this past weekend for their red-white spring game, and a lot of news and storylines came out here throughout the week on HuskerOnline.com as we bring in Nate Klaus to give some analysis just on the week that was. We've talked about the commitments already, but Nate, a huge group of Californians, the Calabrasca crew was on campus. What all came out of that when you break it down here from the red-white weekend?
Well, I think Nebraska positioned themselves extremely well with all the Calabrasca kids following this weekend. And, a lot of them talked about, not knowing how much to believe from Keyshawn Johnson Jr., Tristan Gebbia about Nebraska. They thought maybe those two were kind of hyping up what Nebraska was all about, but they've experienced it firsthand all for themselves, and I think the Huskers vaulted to the top of a lot of those guys' lists. Many of them are planning return visits. Many of them are, have kind of signed on to coming in for that Oregon-Nebraska game in September. So that recruiting weekend is going to be huge. I think we could see a couple commits come out of that group too here in short order. When you talk about a wide receiver like Jameer Calvin, he could be committing at any point in time. And then they position themselves well with Tyjon Lindsey, Brendan Radley-Hiles. Top 100 recruits in the entire nation is pretty impressive.
Well, the Calabrasca crew definitely stole the headlines for Nebraska during the red-white spring game weekend, Nate, but there were a lot of other high-profile guys on campus, as we mentioned, over 20 that offers. Let's start, though, with the JUCOs. There was a very high-profile junior college defensive tackle, definitely an area in need, especially when Mike Riley announced after the red-white spring game, hey, by the way, we're losing 2 defensive tackles here to start the season.
Yeah, Isaiah Johnson out of Miami, Oklahoma, Northeastern Oklahoma A&M was on campus. He's a JUCO D tackle, 6'2", 6'3", 285 pounds or so. He's a difference maker there at that defensive tackle position, a guy that they targeted early, have been able to get on campus now, which is kind of rare. It's difficult to get guys, JUCO guys, on campus in the spring while they have their own spring ball going on, but they're able to get him on campus, and I think that he went back and was talking with his coach, talking with his mother about what he's going to do, what direction he's going to go, and he could be a guy to pull the trigger here soon, which is nice because it's a position of need, and you don't want to see these JUCO guys that you want drag things out.
And lastly, let's talk in-state guys. Austin Allen committed, as we know, the only in-state guy Nebraska's offered here for the class of 2017, but a number of top in-state guys were on campus. It really is shaping up to be a great year on both the offensive line and maybe even the defensive line when you look at a guy like Brett Cottrell.
Yeah, Brett Cottrell out of Ashland Greenwood on campus already has a couple of smaller offers, but is definitely one of those guys that Nebraska is targeting there as a defensive tackle. Could potentially be an offensive lineman too, but I think defensive tackle is the main position the Huskers like him at. And then you had a couple other, offensive line type bodies there. When you talk about Rudy Stauffer out of Kearney, Patrick Arnold out of Gretna, Peter Garrels from Creighton.
It's a great year on the lines.
It is a great year on the offensive lines in state. Probably one of the deeper years that we've seen in a long time. So it's going to be interesting to see how things shake out going into the spring evaluation period, going into camp season here in the next week.
Coaches will be out on the road for really the next 6 weeks. We'll also have the big Rivals camp in Kansas City on May 15th with a lot of top 500-mile radius prospects in attendance. So make sure you are on HuskerOnline.com as we'll have complete coverage.